Today's passage is from Psalm 1. Blessed are those who do not walk in the wicked's counsel, nor stand in the sinner's path, nor sit in the mocker's seat. Instead, Yahweh's teaching is their desire. On it they meditate day and night. And so they shall be as a tree on a riverbank, which fruits in season. Its leaves do not wither, and it prospers. The wicked not so much, they are chaff. The wind scatters. They shall not stand in judgment. The sinful shall not stand in the community of faith. For Yahweh knows the way of the faithful, but the way of the wicked is lost.
All right, thank you, David. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Peace Mennonite. For those who don't know me, my name is Justin. I'm one of the pastors here, and thanks for being with us today. I know it's the first week of July, one of the first real weeks of summer for students and families, and on top of that, it's a long weekend, so the fact that you're here is awesome. Glad to have you. I wouldn't have been too chapped if there were like 3 people here today with all the summer going on, but as I said, glad to see everyone here. It's good amid the lazy, beautiful summer vibes to still gather, and I hope even as we lean into the warm weather and travel plans upcoming that today is not despite all those good things, but part of it. All part of enjoying a life that stems abundantly from God, which is so evident in this season. We're looking forward to a good summer ahead of us here at Peace. We were just privileged to have Gareth Brandt from Emmanuel Mennonite with us all June. He walked us through series on Jeremiah, as Brian reminded us, on calling and justice, on empires and prophets of faith in a time of upheaval and chaos. For those who were here for it, wasn't it just, it was tremendous. Like when he started that poetic portion of his sermon last week, I ascended to another plane. It was so powerful. Mennonite Church BC is lucky to have Gareth. He's a tremendous teacher and a tremendous person, and I'm grateful everyone here got to know him a little better last month. But looking forward, as I said, we have a good summer ahead. We've got some guest speakers coming in. We'll also be hearing from a few of our own church members, which I love. Something I've really come to embrace in my time becoming Anabaptist or Mennonite is the belief and the value that many can study the scriptures and come out with something to say. Bible is not just for pastors or academics or people with PhDs cooped up in offices, but for all who earnestly seek. So look forward to hearing sermons upcoming from all sorts of folks. But until then, I am happy to kick us off. I thought heading into this week, something a little lighter would be good, given Jeremiah was pretty heavy. So I was pretty happy to be given a text in the Psalms today. So we'll be diving into Psalm 1. So I'll open us up in a quick prayer, and then we can dive in. Lord, your word is not so high in heaven that we must ascend to know it. And it is not so far across the sea that we must travel a great distance to hear it. No, it is near us. Not just printed and copyrighted texts from publishers or the lights of an electronic screen, but on our mouths and in our hearts, that we may all know it and live it. So may your Spirit speak anew today to enliven and to enlighten, that we may not just hold this book up as a symbol of power over another, but truly see it for the life that it can give, knowing it is your desire for all to have life in full. Amen. This is the way. That short phrase or slogan belongs to a group known as the Children of the Watch of the planet Mandalore. And I can confidently begin my sermon today with that kind of a reference, knowing a couple of our big Star Wars fans youth would likely not be here today, either away on vacation or starting a summer at Camp Squia. Now, of course, Mandalore and the people from there, the Mandalorians, come from the Star Wars universe, which I've been a fan of since very young. It's one of the first movies I ever saw in theater. But in my time working with the youth lately, I've learned actually I'm like a casual fan at best. I'm not really very knowledgeable. In my sermons, where I often like to include, pop culture references here and there, I have largely avoided Star Wars because I'm afraid of just getting skewered or screwing something up. But today, I am boldly beginning here. Not only because I can do so without fear of getting roasted by someone under 18, but because I think it fits well with our text. I finished the latest season of the TV show The Mandalorian not long ago, and in my reflection this week of both the Psalms and the world of Mandalore, it occurred to me. Isn't it funny how, in many ways, people have grown and evolved and changed, but at the same time, in many ways, maybe we haven't. Though we are thousands of years and kilometers removed from the original context of the Psalms, in many ways, I wonder if we're still quite close. I see that better when I engage a show like The Mandalorian. You see, in both Psalm 1 and The Mandalorian, I see stories of people ultimately wrestling with ideas around moral code, ways of life, how to live wisely and virtuously in accordance with something greater. So whether it is the sacred 2,000-year-old texts of an obscure ancient Near Eastern community, passed down over generations, right, interpreted and translated with reverence and irreverence, or the latest and greatest CGI adventure, streamed at the click of a button through a 21st century global multimedia conglomerate, the fact remains. People are interested in what it means to live well, with purpose, with wisdom, and a code in a world that is often chaotic and confusing, conflicting, and full of grays. So today I open by asking, what does it mean to you to live well? What is your vision of the good life? What is your idea of a good person? What wisdom is required to live all of that out? And how does it all fit in this crazy world that seems to change so fast? That tells you to do this, to buy that, right? That tells you if you're like this, then you'll be accepted. That if you have this job, then you'll have made it, right? That if your family fits this mold, then it is welcome. That if this much is spent on weapons or walls, then we will be safe, right? That if a man is this or a woman is that, then and then and then. What does it mean to live well in a world that can be so confusing? For us at Peace, whatever our answers are to these great big questions, I hope they are Spirit-filled and Jesus-centered, evident in all our practices as a church. But if we're unsure right now what our answers are, I want to say that's okay too, as long as we keep asking these big questions. I hope by engaging our psalm this morning and a bit on Star Wars that maybe we can have a little bit more clarity this morning, and if not, then at least a moment of sober reflection. So to dive in, for those who have never seen The Mandalorian, to give you a brief overview that hopefully I will not get wrong, it stars actor and internet sensation Pedro Pascal in the titular role of the Mandalorian. It takes place in a galaxy far, far away, blending elements of sci-fi and old, like Clint Eastwood kind of westerns. The main character, played by Pascal, as a descendant of a once proud, prosperous people, now belongs to a small group of remnant outcasts who have survived an attempted genocide by the Galactic Empire. Having lost their homes, their holy spaces, their seats of power, the Mandalorian people, by the time of the TV show, live arduously, seeking to preserve or renew their ways of life. As just one of these remnants, then, our main Mandalorian, Pascal, makes his living as a lone bounty hunter on the far edges of the galaxy. And the show chronicles his life's adventures, where he cares little but for his work, for his pay, for his creed, until one day his life is changed when he comes upon care for a young child. Now, I hope in this brief description alone that automatically some blinkers are going off in some people's heads right now. In this TV show, we have a great big empire. We have an obscure people, right, in a backwater colony. We have a nation that's undergone a lot of violence, losing their homeland. And in that, we have everyday folks from there struggling with their way of life and questions of what does it mean to be us in the shadows of an oppressive empire? What does it mean to be us when the great symbols and histories and lands of our people are gone? How do we live according to our ways in this new time, and how might we return to that former glory? This is the way the people of Mandalore say to each other when a hard task lies ahead that requires they live out their ideals and assert their peoplehood. Psalm 1 in the ancient Near East is not so distant from our galaxy far, far away when you think about it this way. For what exists in the background of our Psalms, and indeed pretty much the whole Bible, we have great empires, right? Whether Egypt or Babylon or Rome, they're not intergalactic, but they're still powerful. We have an obscure people in a backwater colony, whether Mandalorian or Israelite. We have a people who have experienced great loss, right? Losing their homes and land through violence or exile or occupation. And ultimately, we see a people forced to find ways to preserve their ways of life, their code, and their identity in these extreme times. For Israel, this tiny underdog nation, what greater glimpses into this are there than our Psalms? When we join in on reading and singing and engaging them, we learn how a people asserted themselves throughout ages of empires, and more importantly, we learn how they witnessed to their God through it all. So my friends, as I said, sometimes we like to think we've progressed very far, right, as people, and I think it's true in some ways. Same time, though, we're still people. At our core, we still wonder about very similar things. So though I hope you don't hear me equating on the same level the Bible story with a Disney franchise that features like Harrison Ford and Jar Jar Binks, I hope you're beginning to see parallels here and how they point to things people have wrestled with for a very long time. So if you have your Bibles with you, I'll invite you to open them up to Psalm 1. I often like to have it in front of me as sermons go on. It begins the whole of the Psalms, and Psalm 1 says this: "Blessed are those who do not walk in the wicked's counsel, nor stand in the sinner's path, nor sit in the mocker's seat. Instead, Yahweh's teaching is their desire. On it they meditate day and night." The first couple of verses set us up real quickly and cogently. There's no preamble to set up a massive book in the Bible, right? Just a straight dive in. Blessed or happy is the one who does not heed group A, but instead does this. Group A, we can chat about a little bit later. I want to first focus on the does this. What is it? Our English Bibles will say some variation of delights in the law of Yahweh, but I like the translation desires the teaching of Yahweh, like teaching or guidance or instruction. Popular contemporary connotations of the word law bring up images of courtrooms, right? Paperwork. I'm sure Josh knows paperwork right now. Rigid rules that I think stray a bit from the heart of what I think is meant here. You may be familiar, law in the Bible often translates to Torah, which can refer to specific verses or all of God's instructions or the first 5 books. Whichever it is here, our text today opens with the assertion or an observation or maybe even a celebration that the way of blessing and joy is the way under God's teaching. Like a tree well watered, a person who desires God's teaching flourishes and bears fruit, says verse 3. It's the summertime, so I love that this imagery fits extra today. This summer, I have been making it a point to hit up all the farmers markets in Vancouver, across Vancouver. And when I show up, and I see the colorful variety of fruits and vegetable and people, I'm just in awe, right? It's inspiring. I have a tiny little garden in my yard, and it's difficult enough trying to get a little harvest and fighting off squirrels. So when I'm at these markets and I smell and see the bounty, I'm not only wowed by what is in front of me, I'm struck by how much time and effort and work had to happen behind the scenes, right, to cultivate the conditions for each and every plant to bear fruit. So I hope our Psalms imagery is not lost on us this July morning. Our poet, our psalmist tells us the one who heeds the Lord's teaching is like a tree, strong and rooted, bearing fruit, not only signifying health, but maybe even abundance for the world around. In contrast, our poem, perhaps too easily for my comfort, sometimes, sets up an opposite group, right? That group A I referred to earlier. And though there is a lot that can be said, who or what this group is, today I just want to focus on the rhetorical purposes of such a setup, right? If we're going to be, in English literature, we might call this a juxtaposition, right? A foil, right? A dichotomy or an antithesis to this flourishing tree. And why do we need it? Ultimately, I think because it helps to further the narrative of the poem. By setting up a general group called the wicked or the sinners, we are further struck by the flourishing of the one who heeds God's instruction. Who are the wicked? We don't know for sure, but it can be inferred that they are those not under the instruction of Yahweh, who do not delight in Torah, and as an end result, it seems, they live a life of ephemerality, which is fading, a life blown away like husks. It is easy and tempting, I think, to conclude from our English translations of Psalm 1 today that there is a violent imperative here, right, in the background of this type of language. But under the context of the whole psalm, which is poetry and relies heavily on poetic devices, I hope we are tempered this morning in how easy we come to that conclusion, and especially who it fits. I want to be clear. I believe the ultimate point of this psalm is not to help us easily, quickly, and so readily put people into camps. It's not about A or B, but about all who engage and who desire a better way, a wiser life, a life cultivating goodness under the tutelage of the Creator. The binary of godly and wicked is, I think, a secondary rhetorical device in service of that ultimate goal, to exhort us to live well. So I think it is enough to say for today that no matter who the wicked are, our poet believes their way ultimately does not last. It fades in times of trouble, in contrast to the rudeness of the student of Yahweh. So from there, verse 6 finishes the poem saying, Yahweh knows the way of the righteous faithful, but the way of the wicked is lost. And that's the end, right? It's so simple, right? The righteous thrive, the wicked fade. There is a moral order to the universe. Everything always works out. Good things happen to good people. Bad things happen to bad people. The Bible is clear, right? It says it. We believe it. The end. I think if we take a moment to think about it this morning, many of us here could say that generally what is described here in Psalm 1 can be and has been true for ourselves or for the world around us at various points in our lives. We believe and can affirm that good decisions, wise instruction generally lead to good things, and that generally bad decisions and foolish instruction lead to bad things. It can be plainly evident in examples big and small. For instance, in a time in my childhood, I woke up every day and ate a slice of McCain's double chocolate cake for breakfast. As I got older, though, it occurred to me I should probably think about this choice a bit. My mom studied nutrition at the U of A, and those she sometimes enabled me in my quest for chocolate, I think ultimately she taught me to know better. So eventually I stopped eating chocolate cake every day for breakfast. I think it was like months. But I figured it out eventually. And today I'd like to think I'm a little better for it. And I have a good upbringing to thank for that. So you see, even in a small example, I was raised a certain way, so to speak. Now I'm reaping a blessing, again, so to speak. It all makes perfect sense. Or to make the examples a little more serious, we can extrapolate to larger things and say the same way, right? Like maybe we have invested in good and wise things, like in education, in service of our long-term life goals. Or maybe we care about cultivating good mutual relationships, so we have reached out to reconcile with those we have fought. Or maybe we have been honest in our finances and generous with our time, so now we are all seeing an honest return. Each of us in our own ways has come to reap good things from the wise decisions and now enjoy the fruit. I think we can affirm that often things add up. Sorry, I'm just getting a bit of glare now. That is until one day, I guess, we realize life does not always work like that. That despite regular exercise and eating well, our health is still subject to a multitude of things beyond our control. Or maybe that degree we got is not so relevant anymore, unfortunately. Or our attempts to reconcile with that friend backfires. Or maybe the stock markets blow up and those investments that promised security fade away. Then what? What happens to our simple equation? Even in the Psalms, if we jump ahead only 2 chapters, we see this simple Psalm 1 math equation challenged. Psalm 3 in David's voice says, Yahweh, how many are my foes who rise against me? This one from the one who is supposedly after God's own heart. Or Psalm 73, I envied the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. Or Psalm 109, they repay me evil for good. So even in a small sample of the Psalms themselves, this supposed biblical clarity comes into question. And I think many of us, if we take a moment to think about it for a second, could also affirm good decisions and wise choices don't always work out the way we believe they should. So there lies the point I'd like to home in on today. I wish I had an answer for you this morning to the question, why do bad things happen? Or more pointedly, why do bad things happen to good people? I obviously don't have that answer. All I can say from the Psalms today is that it is exactly, though, this tension of believing the world can and should work in a good and orderly way because of a hope in a good God, yet experiencing that things are not always so. It is exactly this tension, right? This struggle that I believe forms the essence of the Psalms and ultimately of the faith in you and I. It's what the community of God's people have wrestled with for generations, and it is what many who walk the way of faith continue to wrestle with today. In it all, there is a great paradox of true and untrue, of settled and unsettled, oriented and disoriented, affirmed and challenged, of trust and of doubt. It all works itself out in this great journey we call faith that we must walk and discover. We can all affirm and believe in the orderly world described in Psalm 1, where the good prosper and the wicked fade, until one day we realize it's not so simple. And it's in those moments that I hope we learn to flip the pages to the other 149 Psalms to learn how we can walk. My friends, Psalm 1 is great. Learn from it, live it, love it. But if you stop there, you might be tempted to say at points in your life, the Psalms are naive. They have no clue how the world actually works. Jesus, you might find yourself saying one day, I've done everything right as far as I can see. Why is the one who exploits others, who sows dishonestly, who preys on the poor, doing so much better? What is the point? And that, my friends, is the start of a faith I can get with. In contrast, folks who constantly cry, the Bible is clear, look right here. To me, that could be a little tough to work with. I think even our Psalms might show us it's a little more complicated than that. So I hope we can see today, even in the Bible itself, even within one book, we haven't even gone to Job yet, how an authentic, robust journey of faith draws us into deeper wrestling, right? Of true and untrue, of settled and unsettled, oriented and disoriented, affirmed and challenged, trust and doubt, lament and praise. What a great paradox this walk of faith can be. So I'll end it on a few notes. First, I hope Psalm 1 today gives you some idea of the wisdom of our faith ancestors in answering the question, what is a good life? What does it mean to live well? Make no mistake, Psalm 1 tells us the one who desires the teaching of the Lord and who meditates or murmurs on it is on the good path. This is true, and I testify to this. But as you may know, the teachings themselves are not always easy. Deep lessons are often hard-earned, and that should keep us humble. So on top of this, I hope we are slow to assume we are always on the good path, saying we know the teachings simply because we sit on the pews on a Sunday. Church history is filled with many confident in their walk, all the while paving a road of pain and suffering. So rather than settling us, maybe a text like Psalm 1 today should unsettle us. Instead of a fill-in-the-blank activity, let us allow this word to interrogate ourselves first, even as we strive for greater faithfulness. So may we always have an open posture of curiosity and learning, knowing Christ taught repeatedly the kingdom of heaven, Or to phrase it like the Psalms, those on the walk of faith, those people are not often who we expect them to be. Second, I hope this one case of viewing Psalm 1 through the lens of teaching, of instruction, of guidance helps reorient us from seeing the Bible as a law book a courtroom uses to judge down on everyone. And instead helps us see the Bible as a fount of wisdom that can align us closer to the heart and to the story of God if we wrestle with it well. This wrestling keeps it from being an exercise in history or literature and makes it alive for today. So may this stance keep us from legalistic Bible thumping against those we do not like. Lastly, I hope Psalm 1 reminds you, if life is a highway, the wisdom that is God's teaching is the light on the path, helping us through the ups and downs towards ultimate goodness, to shalom. Some days, like on the nice summer evenings, like I'm sure many of us have been having lately, right? When the food is hot, when the drink is flowing, the friends and family are all there, it's easy to affirm the good order of things. Other days, however, when the well is dried up, and the very worst that could have happened did happen. It's moments like that that I hope we learn faith and doubt are not opponents but partners on this journey. It is that tension that becomes the stuff faith is made of. And in that, may we be here for one another, encouraging, celebrating, yes, mourning too, praying, and yes, sometimes correcting in grace, so that we may face God, that we may face one another, and with every ounce of authenticity, we know that a swashbuckling Mandalorian living on the fringes of the galaxy would, and say to one another, this is the way.